In the 17th and 18th centuries, European powers like England, France, and Spain were engaged in intense rivalries for control over the vast resources and territories of North America. This period, marked by exploration, conquest, and trade, set the stage for future conflicts that would have a significant impact on the American colonies. As colonial settlements grew, tensions mounted, leading to wars and alliances that would reshape the future of North America. In this video, we explore the imperial struggles that ultimately ignited the flames of rebellion. The 17th and 18th centuries saw European powers rush to expand their territories in the Americas. England, France, and Spain all had distinct colonial goals, and these often brought them into direct conflict with each other. For England, the New World was seen as a place to establish permanent settlements and exploit its rich resources, including timber, tobacco, and sugar. The British had already established successful colonies along the eastern seaboard, but their eyes were set on further expansion. France's ambitions were largely centered around the fur trade, particularly in the northern and central parts of North America. French colonization efforts focused on establishing a series of forts and trading posts along the St. Lawrence River, the Great Lakes, and the Mississippi River. They were less interested in settling vast tracts of land and more focused on establishing strong trade networks with Native American tribes who controlled valuable fur resources. Spain, while not as prominent in North America in the 18th century, still held vast territories, including Florida and much of the southwestern United States. The Spanish were primarily interested in the wealth of the Americas, particularly gold, silver, and agricultural products. However, they too had designs on the northern territories and were determined to protect their interests from the French and British. The competition between these powers was fueled by the strategic importance of the continent. North America was viewed not only as a potential economic powerhouse, but also as a key to dominance in the wider world. The global conflict between these European empires, known as the 7 Years' War, was about more than just land. It was about controlling trade routes, wealth, and influence. As settlers pushed westward, they came into direct conflict with Native American tribes. The French had formed alliances with many Native American nations, offering trade goods and military support. In contrast, the British had fewer alliances with native tribes, as their settlers were more focused on farming and establishing permanent communities. As a result, Native American tribes found themselves caught in a complex web of alliances and rivalries. The outbreak of war between France and Britain in 1754 marked the beginning of the French and Indian War. The conflict, which lasted until 1763, was a turning point in North American history. It started in the Ohio River Valley, a region rich in resources that both France and Britain sought to control. British settlers had begun to move westward into territory claimed by the French, and both sides began building forts to assert their dominance. The war saw the involvement of Native American tribes who aligned with either the British or the French based on their own interests. Some tribes, such as the Iroquois, allied with the British in an effort to maintain their influence over the region. Other tribes, including the Algonquin and Huron, sided with the French, who had a more cooperative relationship with them. These alliances were crucial in determining the success or failure of military campaigns. The war quickly escalated, with battles occurring not only in North America, but also in Europe, Africa, and Asia, as part of the broader 7 Years' War. In North America, both sides fought for control of key forts and territories. The French relied heavily on their Native American allies, while the British began to send more regular troops to the colonies. The British, with their larger population and superior navy, were able to gradually wear down the French forces. The turning point came in 1759 with the British capture of Quebec, the capital of New France. This victory sealed the fate of French power in North America. In 1763, the Treaty of Paris was signed, officially ending the war and redrawing the map of North America. France ceded vast territories, including Canada and all land east of the Mississippi River, to Britain. Spain, which had allied with France during the war, ceded Florida to Britain in exchange for the return of Havana. However, the end of the war marked the beginning of new problems for Britain. Although victorious, Britain found itself deeply in debt after financing the war. To pay for the costs of the conflict and the expansion of its empire, Britain turned to its colonies in North America, imposing a series of taxes and laws that would soon lead to widespread unrest. Following the French and Indian War, the British government faced the immense challenge of managing an expanded empire. The Treaty of Paris, which gave Britain control of vast new territories, created new challenges in maintaining order and dealing with the various ethnic and cultural groups now under British control. One of the first steps the British took after the war was the Proclamation of 1763. This proclamation forbade settlers from moving westward beyond the Appalachian Mountains. The British government hoped to avoid further conflicts with Native American tribes, many of whom had fought alongside the French during the war. However, many colonists saw this as an unfair restriction on their right to expand and settle new lands. The proclamation caused immediate anger, especially among land-hungry settlers. In addition to the proclamation, the British government imposed several taxes on the American colonies to recover from the war debt. The most infamous of these taxes was the Stamp Act of 1765, which required colonists to purchase a government-issued stamp for every piece of printed paper. This tax directly affected a wide range of colonial activities, from newspapers to legal documents, and sparked outrage among the colonists. The colonists' response to the Stamp Act was swift and unified. They organized widespread protests and boycotts of British goods. In major cities like Boston, the protests were led by the Sons of Liberty, a group of colonial activists who took to the streets, burning effigies and targeting British officials. The protests culminated in the Stamp Act Congress of 1765, where representatives from 9 of the 13 colonies gathered to protest the tax and demand its repeal. Despite the protests, Britain refused to back down, and in 1767, the British Parliament passed the Townshend Acts, which imposed new taxes on imported goods like tea, glass, and paper. These taxes were equally unpopular, and once again the colonies responded with boycotts and protests. Tensions escalated further with the arrival of British soldiers in American cities. Britain, eager to enforce its laws, sent soldiers to maintain order and suppress dissent. In 1770, British soldiers stationed in Boston fired on a crowd of colonists in what became known as the Boston Massacre. Although only 5 colonists were killed, the incident became a symbol of British oppression and sparked widespread outrage. The British response to the growing unrest was harsh. In 1773, the British government passed the Tea Act, which granted the British East India Company a monopoly on the sale of tea in the colonies. This was seen as another attempt by Britain to assert its control over colonial commerce, and it led to the famous Boston Tea Party. In December 1773, a group of colonists disguised as Native Americans boarded British ships in Boston Harbor and dumped an entire shipment of tea into the water in protest. In retaliation, Britain passed the Intolerable Acts in 1774. These acts, which were designed to punish Massachusetts for the Tea Party, included closing Boston Harbor and revoking Massachusetts' charter. The Intolerable Acts united the colonies in their opposition to British policies, and they called for the convening of the First Continental Congress in 1774. The Congress called for a boycott of British goods and petitioned for the repeal of the Intolerable Acts. The imperial conflicts that defined the 17th and 18th centuries set the stage for the American Revolution. While the French and Indian War gave Britain control of vast territories, it also created a climate of resistance among the colonists. The British imposition of taxes and restrictive laws sparked the drive for independence, and the colonies began to forge a new identity that would eventually lead to revolution and the birth of a nation.